What happens when a woman with a shovel and flowers becomes a threat to the entire street association? When a neighbor tries to prove that she is too simple to own land, she has no idea who will actually control her every move. What happened next turned the entire neighborhood upside down in the most unexpected way. I never thought planting a row of wildflowers would make me a target. But here we are. You know how some folks act like the dirt under their feet belongs to their ancestors even if they bought the house 6 months ago? That's Karen. And no, that ain't her nickname. Her real name is Karen Ruth Baldwin. And believe me when I tell you, she lives up to every syllable. Now let me take you back to the morning it started. The dew was still fresh on my boots and my hands were buried in the good, dark soil of my front yard. I was humming Aretha under my breath, sun hat on, apron tight, knees in the dirt like I was talking to it. Because that's what my mama taught me, talk to the earth and it'll grow you something worth keeping. I was planting bluebonnets along the edge of my land. Something soft for spring. I don't care if nobody else notices, I notice. I spent 3 years saving to buy this little slice of peace just outside of town and I'll be damned if it doesn't look like home. And then I heard it. Click click. Clomp. 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 Like the sound of judgment in orthopedic sandals. I looked up and there she was, Karen, walking her mop of a dog like she was patrolling a military base. Beige pantsuit. Clipboard. Pearls. Even at 7:30 in the morning. Who the hell wears pearls to check mail? She stopped right at the edge of my lot. Right where the little walking path cuts across my land, the one I didn't even know folks used until I moved in. Excuse me, she said, like her throat couldn't believe it had to speak to someone wearing gardening gloves. I pulled them off, slow. Morning. She squinted. Not from the sun from me. I just wanted to remind you, she said, tapping her clipboard, that this portion of the path is commonly used by HOA members. It's not appropriate to dig or obstruct it. I tilted my head. You mean my flowers? She smiled like I was 6 years old and trying to explain quantum physics. They're cute. But yes. I took a breath. A long one. I ain't confrontational by nature. But when someone tells you your own land ain't yours, that itch rises in your chest. I stood up and brushed off my knees. Ma'am, I own this lot, I said. Paid for in cash. Got the deed framed in my kitchen if you want to come read it. This here? This is my dirt. These are my flowers. And this is my business. Karen blinked like I just quoted a foreign language. Well, she said, straightening her posture, some of us believe that land ownership comes with responsibility. This neighborhood has standards. And quite frankly, I've never seen a woman manage this much property alone before. Not properly, anyway. Oh, there it was. Not the land. Not the flowers. Me. I said nothing. I didn't curse. Didn't yell. I just watched her turn around, call her dog, and keep walking like she hadn't just spit centuries of ignorance in my face. I went back to planting. But I wasn't humming anymore. 3 hours later, I got an email. HOA bulletin. Sent to everyone in the community. All residents are reminded not to obstruct shared paths and walking trails. Improper use of property, especially in undeveloped or unverified parcels, may result in a formal review. Unverified? You mean me, don't you? I called the HOA office. No answer. Left a voicemail. Professional. Respectful. Please clarify if my property is being referenced. No call back. Then, around 4 p.m., I saw them. Karen and 2 other women, carbon copies of her, just with different flavors of smug, walking my property line, pointing at things like I was a science project. One of them pulled out a phone and started taking pictures. You need help. I called out. They acted like they didn't hear me. Like I was the help. I felt the heat rise in my chest. Not from the sun. From being erased. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a folder full of land surveys, title papers, and my purchase contract. I highlighted boundaries. I pulled up satellite maps. And I found what I needed. That walking path that Karen loved so much? It didn't exist on any official map. No easement. No right-of-way. Just a worn trail from years of people treating this land like a shortcut. Well, guess what? Shortcut season is over. The next morning I posted a sign. Big. Red. Clear. Private property. Do not trespass. Trespassers will be reported. That's when the real storm rolled in. That evening, Karen came marching up to the sign like it owed her money. You can't just. I raised a hand. Read it. Out loud. Her face twisted like I'd served her unseasoned chicken. This path has been used for years, she snapped. It's practically tradition. Tradition ain't law, sweetheart, I said. And you're not entitled to my land just because you've been walking on it like you own it. Her voice got tight. You are creating conflict where there doesn't need to be one. Oh, honey. The conflict showed up in beige pants and judgment. I just planted flowers. She took out her phone. Fine. I'll escalate this. Make sure your spelling's right, I smiled. It's ain't an A. That's two N's. What burned me the most? It wasn't the path. Or the sign. Or the stares from neighbors like I was the troublemaker. It was the way she said woman. Like it disqualified me. Like I was supposed to feel lucky just to be allowed to live here. Well, I ain't lucky. I'm qualified. I worked 2 jobs, raised 3 kids, buried a husband, and signed the deed with the same hand that pulled them through college. And now some petty neighborhood queen thinks she gets to tell me where to dig? No, ma'am. Let's just say Karen didn't take the word no very well. And she sure as hell wasn't ready for what I had to say next or what I was about to do. Because the moment you draw a line in the dirt, some people think it's an invitation to step over. But baby, that line? It was a fuse. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this fight took a turn no one saw coming. I wasn't 2 days into posting that sign before the passive-aggressive nonsense turned full-on theater. And let me tell you, if Karen had auditioned for Neighborhood Tyrant of the Year, baby, she would have taken home a plaque, a sash, and a fruit basket. You ever see someone mad not because they were right, but because they weren't allowed to be wrong in peace? That's Karen. And that woman was coming unglued piece by judgmental piece. I came home from the grocery store to find a crisp white envelope duct taped to my front gate. Duct taped? I thought it was a joke at first, but when I peeled it off and saw the embossed seal from the HOA board, my jaw locked tighter than a church door after midnight. It read, Dear Ms. Thorns, you are in violation of Neighborhood Aesthetic Code 14.2.1 regarding signage placement and path obstruction. Failure to comply may result in fines or escalated action. Fines? Fines for what? Protecting my own land from folks who treat it like a sidewalk? I walked straight into the house, kicked off my shoes, and called the number on the letter. A woman answered like she was being paid by the sigh. This is Angela. Angela, I said, this is Anna Thorns. I'm calling about a letter I just received taped to my gate. Long pause. Oh, you're the property on Sycamore Hill. The property? I took a slow breath. Yes, the property. What's this letter about? She sighed again. I swear I could hear her eyes rolling through the phone. The board received complaints that you've posted signage on what might be shared trail access. I laughed. Out loud. The kind of laugh that says, you've got the wrong one. Ma'am, there's no shared trail. That's my land. I've got county maps. Title records. I even got it notarized twice just so nobody could pull something like this. She hesitated. I see. Well, if you believe the signage is within your rights, you're welcome to present documentation at the next HOA meeting. Oh, I will. And bring snacks, you're gonna be here a while. That same night, I caught her flash in hand, hoodie on, creeping up to the sign like she was casing a bank. I opened my front door and turned on the porch light. You need help reading that, or are you just out here doing community theater? She froze. Turned around slow. That smug look plastered right back on like lipstick. I was just verifying the boundary. It's my right as an HOA member. Funny. I didn't realize HOA members came with night vision and a lockpicking set. She bristled. We'll see what the board has to say about this. No, you'll see what I have to say with maps, receipts, and legal backing. Hope you got a good seat reserved. Next morning, I noticed something strange. One of the flower beds I'd planted along the path was dug up. Not all of it. Just the edge. A clean scoop. Like someone had taken a shovel, dug a line, and walked off. I stood there for a solid minute, silent. Not mad. Not even surprised. Just tired. Tired of being poked like I was some kind of test. I filed a police report. Officer Jennings came by. Kind man, older, said his mama used to grow flowers just like mine. I can't promise anything, Ms. Thorns, he said. But I'll log it. That's all I needed. One line in a report. Just enough to prove I wasn't imagining the circus. When I walked into that room on Thursday night, it felt like walking into a Cold War. Karen was seated in the front row, legs crossed, notebook in hand like she was about to take minutes and names. The room was filled with people I'd seen a dozen times at the grocery store, at church, walking dogs, but tonight every eye looked at me like I was a courtroom defendant. Quiet. Judging. The president of the HOA, a bald man named Craig who had the personality of a soggy cracker, cleared his throat. Miss Thorns, we'd like to discuss the signage you've placed along the trail access. I held up a folder. Thick. Heavy. Before you continue, I said, I've got documentation proving this trail is not, in fact, access. It's private land. Owned. Registered. Filed with the county. And unless the HOA has started annexing land like it's 1823, you don't have jurisdiction. Karen's face went white. Not pale, paper. I laid the maps flat on the table. Handed out copies. Pointed to the borders. This line here? That's the property edge. This path? It's on my land. And this? I pulled out the original deed. This is dated, stamped, and recorded. You're on the wrong side of the line, folks. Craig blinked like he just realized his cereal had expired. Well, we'll need time to review these. Take all the time you want, I said. Meanwhile, I suggest everyone stop using my property like it's a shortcut to Trader Joe's. A few people laughed. Karen did not. I figured after that meeting folks would let it go. Nope. Next week, I found flyers on my mailbox. Uncooperative neighbor blocks community access. Is this the spirit of togetherness? It wasn't signed, of course. But the font? Karen Classic Bold. Then came the social media posts. Some people don't understand community spirit. I miss when this neighborhood felt welcoming. And my favorite. Why buy land if you're just going to hoard it? Oh, I see now. A black woman minding her business on her legally owned land is suddenly a hoarder. I posted one reply. Y'all ever notice how community only matters when someone else is expected to give something up? There's a certain strength in being underestimated. In folks assuming you'll fold if they push hard enough. But I come from women who stood tall during storms, not because they were fearless, but because they didn't have time to be scared. I kept watering my flowers. I added a second sign. I installed cameras. And every time Karen walked by, I waved. Because I knew something she didn't. When people come for your peace and all you do is stand firm, it drives them wild. This is it. The turning point. What comes next will flip this whole fight upside down, and you won't believe how far it goes. Stick around, because this is where everything changes. They say when people feel powerless, they start grabbing for control even if all they're grabbing is air. That's what Karen was doing. Grabbing. Clawing. Gasping for a version of this neighborhood where she still ran the show. But the problem with trying to control other folks' lives is, sooner or later, someone's gonna slam the door in your face. And guess who just installed a brand new lock? Me. It started out peaceful, birds chirping, tea steeping, sun rising behind the hills like it had nowhere to be but here. And then came the knock. No, not a knock. A bang. I opened the door and there stood Karen, flanked by a man in khakis and a blue polo holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. Anna, she said, not even pretending to smile, this is Curtis from the County Infrastructure Committee. I said, crossing my arms. And what's the committee doing on my porch? Curtis cleared his throat like he was rehearsing. We received a concern regarding access paths in this region. HOA representatives believe there may have been a historic utility trail across your property. If that's true, the county has jurisdiction. Oh, I said, blinking slowly. You mean the ghost trail Karen walks her dog on every morning like she owns my topsoil? He flinched. Karen tightened her jaw. I stepped back and held the door open. Come on in. Let me introduce you to Exhibit A through Z. Curtis didn't even make it past Exhibit C before he realized he'd been dragged into a turf war he had no business refereeing. This deed is recent, he muttered, flipping papers, and there's no easement on file. There isn't, I cut in. Because that land was never public. It was neglected. Overgrown. Treated like a community doormat. Until I came along, bought it legally, cleaned it up, and planted something real. Curtis nodded slowly. Karen's nostrils flared. Well, he said carefully, from a county standpoint, you're within your rights. Karen's head snapped so fast I thought I heard a crack. But Curtis added, and my eyes narrowed, I'd recommend a community mediation meeting just to ease tensions. Let me stop you right there, I said, lifting my hand. I don't mediate ownership. I don't negotiate what's mine. Y'all want peace? Try staying on your own property. He left. She didn't. Karen lingered on the porch like mildew, clinging, silent, bitter. You could have avoided all this, she said, low and sharp. I leaned in just enough to meet her gaze. And you could have minded your business. But now that you didn't, let me show you what happens next. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I invested. Not in stocks. Not in appliances. In infrastructure. You see, when you've got property people keep stomping through like they're entitled, you stop trying to explain and start enforcing. I called the county. Filed for a limited-use pedestrian easement toll permit, fancy term for saying, if someone wants to cross my land, they're gonna pay per step. And here's the kicker, if they don't, it's trespassing. Legally. Now, to be clear, I wasn't trying to be spiteful. But when someone calls you a woman with flowers who doesn't understand land, then tries to march their whole dog-walking crew through your backyard, baby, it's time to build a gate and put a meter on it. It wasn't fancy. Just good old-fashioned metal posts, a locking latch, and a keypad for access installed professionally and posted with clear signage. Private access gate. Residents must request entry in writing. Fee, $5 per day, $20 per week. Non-payment equals trespassing. And let me tell you, the rage that poured out of this neighborhood was something I hadn't seen since they closed the old church buffet. I got notes in my mailbox. You're changing the character of this community. Who charges for walking? This is petty and unnecessary. No names. Of course. But one note, written in big block letters on pink paper, stood out. This is war. I didn't have to guess. I knew the handwriting. 2 days later, it happened. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I heard shouting near the gate. Karen. Her leash tangled. Her dog yapping. She was yelling into the intercom like it was a courtroom mic. You can't do this, she snapped. This is harassment. I pressed the speaker button calmly. Hi Karen. You're standing on private property. Again. You don't have the right, eh? I have paperwork, I said. Want me to fax it to your HOA meeting? She lunged at the gate like she thought anger could unlock metal. And as she did, her sandal caught on a root and down she went. Right into a fresh patch of my flower bed. Now listen. I ain't the type to laugh when someone falls. But that day, I had to bite my tongue so hard I nearly tasted steel. She stood up, covered in dirt and petals, face redder than a fire hydrant. You'll regret this, she hissed. I smiled, raised my cup. Too late, sugar. I'm already enjoying it. Here's the wildest part. Once the gate went up and folks realized I wasn't backing down, something shifted. One neighbor, Mrs. Fulton, 3 doors down, brought me banana bread and whispered I've been waiting on someone to stand up to her for years. Another, Mr. Kent, waved at me for the first time since I moved in. Even teenagers on bikes started cutting around my property. Respect had been planted. Like the flowers. Like the fence. And it was growing. One last letter came, typed, formal, full of whereas and heretofore. It demanded I cease obstruction of community traditions. I wrote back, Dear Board, I ain't obstructing. I'm protecting. The only tradition being broken is folks walking over women like they don't matter. This land is mine. I bought it. I clean it. I pay taxes on it. If y'all want a shortcut, go by your own. With sincere regards. Anna Thorns. Deed holder. Flower planter. Gate owner. This was the fallout. But the final showdown? Oh, it's still coming. What I did next made even Karen stop in her tracks. You better believe you'll want to see how this ends. You ever feel something shift in the air even before it happens? Like the trees lean in closer and the birds fly different and your coffee tastes just a bit stronger than usual, not because you brewed it better, but because life is about to get good? That was the morning I woke up and saw Karen standing in front of the gate again. But this time, she wasn't yelling. She wasn't pacing. She was just standing there. Hands folded in front of her, chin tight, eyes fixed on the keypad like it was holding the secrets of the universe. And just like that, I knew something had cracked. Not just in her. In this whole little war she'd been waging. Because sometimes, when people finally run out of fights, all they're left with is silence. Now, I heard the beep on the system. I was inside. Sipping on my good mug, the one that says, I earned this land, in big letters. Yes, I had it custom made. And no, I ain't sorry. I waited a beat. 2 beats. Let her stew in it. Then I pressed the button. Yes. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone trying to remember how to be polite after forgetting for years. May I come through? I leaned back in my chair. Didn't catch that. One more time. A pause. May I come through, please? There it was. Not submission. Not defeat. But something far more valuable, acknowledgement. It didn't happen overnight. You know that already. It was every time I didn't flinch when they whispered behind my back at the farmer's market. Every time I smiled when HOA tried to scare me with paperwork I'd already outread twice before breakfast. Every time I held the gate key in my hand and remembered exactly who paid for this land, who planted every seed, who shoveled every inch of dirt. Me. And let me say this loud for the people in the back. No one gets to tell a woman she can't own land. Not today. Not in 2025. Not in my lifetime. Because land ownership ain't just about acres and deeds. It's about power. It's about legacy. And it's about telling the next generation, especially the little girls who look like me, yes, baby, this can be yours too. I stepped outside barefoot in the grass. The gate buzzed and clicked open. Karen stepped through slow like the gravel might bite her. I appreciate it, she mumbled. Mom, I said. So, what brings you through today? She looked around, then back at me. Wanted to say I was wrong. Now look, if you've been through what I've been through, you know better than to clap for crumbs. But I'll admit, hearing those words come out of her mouth felt like thunder rolling after a drought. Wrong about what exactly? I asked. Not mean. Just direct. She exhaled. I treated you like you didn't belong here. Like owning land was something you needed permission for. I see now that I was unfair. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything right away. Not because I was angry, I wasn't. I was watching. Measuring. Because apologies are like fertilizer, they don't mean anything unless the roots are real. Now before you go thinking the story ends in a group hug, let me set it straight. The gate? Still up. The toll? Still charged. Because forgiveness don't mean forgetting. It means moving forward with boundaries. Karen doesn't fight me anymore. She walks around. Or she pays. And when she passes through, she nods. Not because we're friends, but because we now understand each other. And in this neighborhood? That's more valuable than a potluck casserole. You know what happened after that? More women in the neighborhood started asking about land records. Mrs. Daniels on Willow Street found out the HOA was mischarging her for a plot she didn't even own. Tanisha down by the creek bought the empty lot next to her house just to make sure no one else tried to build on it without her say. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about planting power. Couple weeks later, I got a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Just neat little handwriting and a glitter pen. Miss Anna. My grandma says you're the one who made the mean lady stop being mean. I think you're brave. I want to own land too one day. Love. Jasmine, age 8. That letter? I framed it. Because that right there, that is legacy. I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came for peace. For growth. For flowers in the dirt and sun on my face. But what I got instead was a fight for something bigger than me. And let me tell you, I won. Not because I shouted. Not because I got revenge. But because I stood my ground literally and made sure nobody walked over me without paying the toll. So next time somebody tells you what you can't do, don't argue. Just smile. And build a gate. Let them figure it out when they're standing on the other side, wondering how you got so strong. Yes, Karen still pays. Yes, the HOA is quieter now. And yes, the flowers I planted that first morning, they came in full bloom this spring. Bright. Proud. Unbothered. Just like me.